Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of Conversations with Curtis. My name is Lonnie Davis, and I'm the president of JazzArts Charlotte. And tonight, I'm also your video producer for the evening. We have a very exciting show for you tonight. Lots of great artists, lots of great people here to talk about a very exciting project that JazzArts will be broadcasting this Friday. And so I will go ahead and pass everything along to Curtis so that he can share more about what we're up to. But again, thank you for tuning in to all of you on Facebook Live and all of you on YouTube Live. We appreciate your support and watching the program. So without any further ado, Curtis Davenport.
Okay, and thank you, Lonnie, and thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Welcome to Conversations with Curtis. As Lonnie told you, I am Curtis Davenport, and I'll be your host and kind of facilitator here for this very exciting conversation that we're having. It's our first one of the new year, 2021. So I guess since it's our first time together, I can still say Happy New Year and hope everyone is doing well. As Lonnie mentioned, we have a very exciting, very interesting evening to start off the year with. Late last year, 2020, JazzArts Charlotte was able to make a stunning recreation recording of one of the legendary pieces by the great drummer Max Roach, his We Insist Freedom Now Suite, which was recorded in 1960. So for the 60th anniversary in Uptown Charlotte at the Black Lives Matter mural, we were able to record it. Now that show is going to have its premiere right here on our JazzArts Charlotte website on this Friday, February the 12th, 8 p.m. Again, we'll be mentioning that and having more information about that as the evening goes on. But I am so excited to have as my guest tonight many of the artists who were responsible for that recreation tonight. You'll be meeting them as they come along. Just to let you know who we have with us now at this point, we have the artistic director of JazzArts Charlotte, who was also the drummer on the piece, and that is O.C. Davis. We have Shannon Hoover, who was on bass, Lavelle Bradford, who was on piano, Dawn Anthony, our vocalist, Tyrone Jefferson, who was on trombone, and Elijah Freeman, who was on tenor sax, along with Dr. Willie Griffin, who will be with us here from the Levine Museum, who will be here to provide us with some historical perspective. I also, before we go any further, want to pay a very special thank you to our JazzArts Charlotte sponsors, without whom this evening would not have been possible. And we have some new ones as well, so I want to make sure that we start out by thanking them. So if we can just thank those sponsors, the new and the ones who've been with us a while. Yes, we want to thank the Knight Foundation, the Arts and Science Council, the North Carolina Arts Council, O's Place Magazine, and one of our new sponsors, U.S. Bank. Thank you all for your sponsorship of the arts and of jazz, and especially of JazzArts Charlotte. So now let's get into our program. We'll talk a little bit about what it is that we're honoring, and I'll give you a little, at least musical perspective as we start out. The year was 1959. The famed drummer Max Roach had begun work on this project along with the vocalist and lyricist Oscar Brown Jr. This was something in 1959 they began work on with the thought of having it ready in time for the 100th anniversary, the centennial of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was coming in 1963. However, as we talk about the fierce urgency of now, with young Black men and young Black women all around the U.S. demanding their rights and asking for, not asking, but demanding, they began to work faster and harder on this piece with the idea of having it ready with the Greensboro Sit-Ins and other sit-ins going on around the country. That is something that needed to be ready and needed to be out now. So that's why the piece was called We Insist the Freedom Now Suite. And that's where we start with honoring. And I want to start out by asking a question, if I could, of Lonnie Davis, who, of course, is our president of JazzArts Charlotte. Lonnie, can you tell me a little bit about where the idea to produce this came from. What inspired you to recreate this piece at this time? Lonnie, I'm not sure if others can hear. I
Hello,
can't hear.
hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank
About in a conversation with a friend, we were casually talking about something completely unrelated, and the conversation of We Insist came up. And through that conversation, I learned that he had access to the scores for the album, and so of course I was very interested in getting access to the music because I, certainly wanted to see what it was about, to learn more, and certainly to explore the idea of Jazz Art Charlotte being able to present the music here in Charlotte. And so it's actually a friend. He's in St. Louis, or was in St. Louis. A friend, Phil Dunlap, and so provided the music. And after having access to that music for a while and kind of pondering, what the possibilities were, the vision for We Insist came about.
Okay. And so the rest, as they say, is history. We'll get to OC in a little bit and talk about the artistic perspectives and what he did to put it together musically. But what I want to do first, to give our audience a little bit more of a historical perspective, I'd like to go to Dr. Griffin now and ask Dr. Griffin, with you being a historian and a learned man who knows quite a bit about what has gone on in the Charlotte area and in North Carolina, not only present, but past. Can you give us a little historical perspective? I mentioned the Greensboro Sit-Ins. What was going on in our community here in Charlotte, sir, around that time, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. You started off talking about sort of the how this all came about in 1959. A lot of these young students who sort of, what historians suggest in 1960 is when the civil rights movement really began, right? When you see the spread of massive protest all around the country. In 1955, when we're taught in school, you have the Montgomery bus boycott. And then, short before the Montgomery bus boycott, you have the murder of Emmett Till. And a lot of these youth at the time in 1960 and 1959, they actually referred to themselves, when you got to interview them and talk to them about that time, they called themselves or referred to themselves as the Emmett Till generation. So they could not stand by and allow something like these things to continuously happen. So in 1960, this happened as a result of students getting together, having a bull session, and they're talking about the things that they're reading. And the Pittsburgh Courier at the time was the most important Black newspaper for the African-American community. And they're reading about all of these changes that are happening all across the South. And they come to the conclusion that the time is now. We insist, so to speak. We will not stand to be mistreated anymore. We are citizens. We understand our history. We understand our contributions to this country, and we just won't stand by and take it anymore.
Okay. Yes, and that certainly was a context for what. With what went on in Greensboro, which is considered, if I'm not mistaken, the first of the boycotts, at the Greensboro Lunch Counter Sit-In in 1960. Now, I also understand, sir, that there were also some sit-ins, if I can just expound on that, sit-ins going on here in Charlotte as well. Can we talk a little? Maybe I heard about something at Belk's or some of the others that we might have heard of there. Can we talk about that?
Yes, certainly. So the Greensboro sit-ins happened on February the 1st, 1960. And as I said, or as I've talked about it when I teach it, the reason historians call this the first moment of the civil rights movement, because within a matter of 3 months, there were sit-ins happening in 30 cities across the country. I mean, that is akin to how we see the Black Lives Matter movement spread all across the country. This is the first time that this had happened. So February 1st, you have the Greensboro sit-ins. A little over a week later, February 9th, you have the Johnson C. Smith student sit-in. And the sit-ins that happened here in Charlotte were actually the second largest sit-in movement to happen in the country. It was the most sustained, and it lasted over a period on and off for 2 years. The leader of that movement was Charles Jones. Many of you who are from Charlotte probably recognize them, but women played a huge role in the sit-in movement as well. But they marched downtown, and over 200 students, they targeted stores like Belk's, Woolworth, McClellan's, Ivy, Sears, and Roebuck. Every store that had a lunch counter, the Johnson C. Smith students went in and sat and protested.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. Want to go next to my good friend O.C. Davis, our artistic director at JazzArts Charlotte. And O.C., now Lonnie told us about getting the scores. So you had fallen into possession of something amazing in just having those scores. Can you talk a little bit about once you had the music in hand and once you had the product being, or the project already being a catalyst, can you tell me a little bit about the process of preparation, how you selected the musicians, how you went about putting things together musically to come up with what is, as I've seen it, a brilliant project? And OC, you're on mute still at this point.
All right.
Here this time, brother. All right, go ahead, man.
All right. Well, there's just an opportunity to work to put together a project at that time, because as you know, a lot of us weren't working at the time. You know, we're adjusting to this new lifestyle. So what we wanted to do was put together an A team and just dealt with consummate professionals that we knew that could articulate this music, execute this music, take this music seriously, and do their due diligence in learning it, processing it. And once we came together, it was like a family reunion of sorts, you know what I mean, to have a cause, you know what I mean, to rally behind. And we had time, but not a whole lot of time to rehearse. So we made the most of our opportunities to rehearse, and I believe it shows in the end product. You know, having Tyrone Jefferson holding down, you know, the brass and woodwinds, you know, master musician, as well as Lavelle Bradford holding down the whole harmonic aspect of it, as well as melodic. I knew it would be efficient, you know, to bring it all together. Did a great job. Plus his temperament, you know, so it was just, you know, labor of love, man. And, you know, my responsibility was to make sure the percussion and the drum parts were correct. You know, I had a lot of studying to do and listening to do to interpret Max Roach to the best of my abilities. And, you know, it was just a matter of us coming together and make sure everything was on point. And having those guys involved made it extremely easy, right? So we also want to approach it in a generational point of view aspect. Having Tyrone along with Elijah, I knew that would be a nice camaraderie right there to give them a chance to meet each other and learn from each other generationally, as well as a percussionist. We had Mr. Mumford, who's an elder, along with his son, who's a teenager, along with another young man who's a teenager as well, on the djembe drums or percussion. So we want to make this a communal kind of thing. And then to set everything to the highest standard, you know, the goddess, you know, Miss Anthony, she came through there and just really surpassed, honestly, my expectations. Because when you hear the recording of this album, it's like, wow, that's a high mark, you know. And she came in the first rehearsal and was just killed it, just, you know. So we really had no worries. It was a matter of us just, when are we gonna perform the thing? Because, you know, we had you know, all these conventions, Republicans in town. We had bad weather, inclement weather. So it was a matter of just scheduling it for the city, because we were on the Black Lives Matter mural, you know. And what else can we say? We got a special guest, Sean Jones, coming in and just put it over the top. So I'm very proud of this work. We learned a lot from it, and I'm just, you know, proud to say that, you know, this goes down in the history and the archives of Charlotte, man. And I couldn't be happier doing what we do as a jazz organization, nonprofit, with our focus on education. So extremely proud. And I think you guys, once you see it, you feel the same way.
As well, you should be. I guess you know, very blessed as being the host. I've gotten to see a sneak preview and gotten to see everything. And I think it is just simply brilliant from beginning to end. I mean, that original work is something I've loved for many a year. And so I must say that all of you have more than done it justice. And I congratulate you all, my friends and artists for the great work that you've done. Now, I've got questions for each of you. Okay,
I want to say real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I don't want to slide anybody. So the original composition, original music that Max Roach penned, there was no piano player. So you had the harmonics that were not necessary. They were taken out, extracted.
Oh man, I was going to ask Lavelle about that.
Hey, man, I gotta give props to do. So, but we knew that with Lavelle being a part of this, his complexities, articulation of harmonies, that he would bring a lot to the project, and did a great job. And it kind of gave us an underpinning and brought it all really together. So, just his participation, really made it a worthwhile experience.
And he absolutely did. Now, go ahead, man. What?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. So, Lavelle, I'm going to come back to you about that, but I want to get to my friend, Ms. Dawn Anthony first. And as OC said, just your absolutely brilliant work, and you are standing in some formidable shoes there, ma'am. You are standing in the shoes of the legendary Abbey Lincoln on this recording. And for me, as much as I loved and appreciated Abbey Lincoln's work on this, Dawn, with your vocal gifts, you brought some new things to it musically that, at least for me, I hadn't heard out of this before in your work. So can you talk a little bit, Dawn, about some of the challenges you might have faced coming into, let's face it, what was a challenging musical part? I mean, I'm sure it asked for a lot from you as a vocalist. And can you talk about some of the challenges you faced and some of the great things that came for you out of doing this?
It was tremendously challenging because I so honor and respect Miss Lincoln and what she has brought to the community and where she could have been and where she chose to be with her music and her artistry, and how she chose to articulate the experience of Black America, and also Black women and how women fare, even in the opening of Driver Man. But nevertheless, it was challenging, having a background in music. I wanted to challenge myself, having had the opportunity to sing European composers and putting other languages in my mouth, that I was determined that there's a particular piece where she begins to recall and elicit the tribes all over the continent of Africa. And it was very important to me to make certain that if I could put Russian in my mouth, surely I could put African languages in my mouth. So I was determined to really begin to make that a part of me, who I was, not only just in hearing, but in speaking it. So in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, words were posted everywhere, to the point where I felt like I could share it, that it came naturally for me.
All right. And let's just continue along that, as you were talking about what came with All Africa there. Let's talk a little bit about Triptych, which was one of the most searing and still one of the most controversial pieces of music in that entire presentation. I mean, the now famous or infamous scream that Ms. Lincoln first evinced when she was in the protest section really was the thing that for many people put them off from this entire piece of music for many years. People said things like, it was Max Roach trying to thumb his nose at Martin Luther King and the movement of nonviolence and other things like that. But on top of everything else, just to stand there and literally scream as Ms. Lincoln did and as you did, talk about some of the feelings that you had during that piece, if you wouldn't mind, Dawn.
I think that during that piece, even approaching it, first of all, from listening to it, there was a great deal of, first of all, fear, like, oh, and what that could potentially do, to my voice or whatever. But what I wanted to do is I began to think about the experiences of the voices that I didn't know, that didn't have words. Mm-hmm. And so when thinking about that, being able to voice the emotion of voices from the past, the present, and potentially future, then it was an honor to be able to even do that. I think oftentimes when people listen to music, particularly by Black artists, they're used to consonant sound, really peaceful, soothing sounds. They're fine with listening to spirituals. They're fine with listening to hymns and gospel music. But to hear, as she says in one of the tunes, in the opening of one of the tunes, that she's talking about the rhythm, that some of it is bitter and some of it is sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the screaming is the bitter. And sometimes you have to take that along with the sweet. And so I was open to the challenge.
And absolutely. And once again, fine job that you did. And just blessings and kudos to you for your outstanding work there, Dawn.
Wow.
Want to get to Brother Lavelle Bradford. Now, Mr. Bradford, as OC mentioned, this was an additional challenge for you in the fact that for whatever reason, I'm not think. Okay, Lavelle seems to be frozen. I don't know. Lavelle, can you still hear me? Not sure if he can hear. If Lavelle can't hear me, yep. Well, hey, we're no better than MSNBC or any of those cats. You know, they have the same challenges. I see people being frozen there all the time. So, Lavelle, can you hear me? I'll try again.
I hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I just heard you say that, bro. Yeah. All right. I can hear you. Okay.
All right.
Can you hear us? Okay. Always fun. New challenges of the digital age, y'all. And we're also very happy to be joined by the outstanding trumpeter Sean Jones, who's joined us. And I think I just lost Lavelle Bradford from my array. So I'm just going to skip over Mr. Bradford and let's go to until he returns. Let's go to the oldest member of our group now, the old man, the veteran, Mr. Elijah Freeman, and who was on tenor sax on the. Well, first of all, let me ask before going anywhere. Elijah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, yeah, and I hear you too, man. Okay, so Elijah, you're just. Let's talk about for real. First met you about 3 or 4 years ago, when you were part of the JazzArts All-Stars, fresh-faced, very gifted young man, and showing what great talent you had. I hear a lot of Joe Henderson in that horn, but developing your own voice as well. Suddenly, you're going from being in high school, so suddenly a few weeks later, you find yourself on stage with the great Sean Jones at your elbow. What was that like? Let's talk about that experience of suddenly going to playing on that front line with Sean Jones, with Tyrone Jefferson, and having some of the finest musicians regionally and nationally and playing with them. What was that like? And any fears, any challenges, anything that you learned from that experience?
Well, definitely not a fear per se, but a lot of the great musicians that I was able to play with, including Sean and Tyrone, I met them in other spaces as mentors. Like in 2017, I was in the essentially Ellington competition, and Sean was the guest judge. Okay. And that was the first time I was ever introduced to someone of that caliber. And to think 3 years later, I would be playing with him on stage, like I wouldn't have believed that if you would have asked me that then. And same thing with Tyrone. I met him as soon as I met you at the Jazz Room with OC and Lonnie. And after seeing those people and getting to see them operate in their space with such professionalism, it was that's what I want to aspire to be. And I feel like, coupled with all of the wonderful blessings Lonnie and OC have granted me and hard work as a musician, I've been able to get that experience, and I would not trade that for anything. I wish we could do that gig tomorrow. So
well, hopefully, if not tomorrow, hopefully as more people get injected and do other things, and wear masks and whatever else. Hopefully we'll be able to do it a lot sooner than later. But hearing you acquitted yourself quite well. So congratulations on your fine work there. Now let's try Lavelle again. Before I go to anybody else, once again, we will be going as usual to a Q&A segment toward the end. So if you do have questions, get them ready, drop them in the chat. Lonnie and I will be collecting them and making sure we do ask the artists or our educators the questions that you have. So, Lavelle, let's try it again. Lavelle, can you hear me this time?
Can you hear me?
I could. You're halting a little bit, brother, but I can. Let's try. Let's get started and see how far we get, man. So,
All right.
so
Can you hear me now?
yeah, I hear you just fine now. Okay, so once again, as OC mentioned when we were talking a little while ago, you were put into an unusual place coming into this, in that although, as OC and Lonnie talked about, they had been given the arrangements, been given the charts, for whatever reason, Mr. Roach and his arrangers decided to leave out a piano in this. So you're coming in there filling a space that wasn't initially written for. Can we talk about some of the challenges you had in that, or also maybe some of the freedoms you had in not having a template to work with?
No problem.
And he's so moved by it that he just can't speak. Okay, but
All right. If you can hear me?
I can. You're going in and out, but let's try it.
All right. So I'll talk before I get off again. This was such a treat and honor, especially as those mentioned earlier. Timing of the thing, right in the midst of our new normal and a new reality, being able to, for a short time, do rehearsals, just play with other musicians, that was a treat. And then the other thing was, I ashamedly had very limited knowledge and listening opportunities for the album. And so this was quite a learning experience for me. The piano situation was easy of those challenges, because even the transcript and the music that was sent to me not have piano parts in it, so we could kind of put YouTube recordings and such, but we managed to pull this together. So I'm proud of what we were able to do in the end.
And you're breaking up a little bit, but you did do some very fine work there, sir, and we thank you for that. Sorry about the issues we're having with audio. Want to see Mr. Jefferson, I think, is still having some problems there. Not sure if he can hear or, okay, not sure if we can hear Tyrone at this point. We'll go to Shannon Hoover. Want to get to Shannon Hoover, and then we'll get to Mr. Jones. In the meantime, let me see if we can get Tyrone up and around. So Shannon, are you there? I can see you, but can you hear me?
Yeah, all here. How you doing?
Okay, how you doing, man? Good to see you as always.
Good to see everybody.
All right, let's talk about a little bit about the experience for you coming in and playing with these fine group of musicians and doing the great work that you did there. Anything? What was your most memorable experience, I guess we can say, from being a part of this here?
Well, it's always good coming up to Charlotte. I'm down in Greenville, South Carolina, so I always love coming up and playing with those cast of musicians they use. And OC called me. He's like, "Hey, I got this cool thing I need you on." I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. Let's do this thing." And I'd say the most, there was some cool music in there. A lot of nice grooves. We got in the African frame of mind, Afro-Cuban sort of frame of mind. We had some 5/4 grooves we were working on, and 3/4 time, and there was a really fast Freedom Day was probably one of the more challenging ones. Really upswing, trying to keep that energy up, and then you hear these solos by Sean Jones and Lavelle, and you just try not to just stop playing. But it was a lot of fun, and like Elijah said, waiting for an opportunity to try it again.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's hard, I guess, at that point to go from your party who wants to be a spectator, just to be a part of the audience, but to go and realize you got work to do, man,
Right.
So we're glad to have you on as well. And we're very glad to welcome the two-time downbeat rising star and one of the, in my own opinion, and my opinion matters, one of the finest trumpeters working today. Want to welcome and say we're glad to have you, sir. Mr. Sean Jones, first of all, glad to have you with us, sir.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's a true honor. True honor.
And we were truly honored to have you as a part of our presentation here for We Insist the Freedom Now Suite. First of all, if you can tell me, Sean, how did we, obviously you had to travel to get here, you know, and further from just up the road to Greensboro. How did you, well, let me rephrase that question. What made you decide to join us here, to decide that this was important enough in the midst of this pandemic to travel to Charlotte to be here?
Well, great question. And I have to say it's two things. One, of course, the music itself, and two, family. I mean, JazzArts has always been sort of on my radar, and OC and Lonnie, you know, they do amazing things in so many different capacities. And Lonnie and I have an opportunity to work together with the Jazz Education Network, and she gave me a call, and literally there's no real hesitation there, other than whether we were going to be able to do it or not. And at the time it was first presented, there were some issues going on in the country, lots of protests, so we had to postpone it. Mm-hmm. And I immediately got a little upset. I said, man, I hope we get a chance to make this happen again. And luckily the dates worked out and I was there, and that's going to always be the case for this wonderful organization. And I just have to give a shout out to Brother Davis real quick, OC. Absolutely. I've had an opportunity to play this music a few times, and I'm just going to be frank. Drummers always do two things. They always chase Max Roach, or they overplay, or they're afraid, you know. But the way that this master drummer basically took us through this entire product without sounding just like Max, with tipping his hat to Max, with giving the best he could to the entire energy of the thing. I mean, as the performance went on, I was like, man, this cat is like the truth. Like, for real, the truth. It wasn't overdone. It wasn't downplayed. And it was all you. Brother, fantastic job. That is one of the hardest drum chairs to play in this music. Thank you so much. It was an honor to watch you and listen to you.
Oh, all right, man. We appreciate that. I'll let OC, if he has something to say in response, I'll shut up and let him talk. But go ahead, man.
Wow, man. I wasn't expecting that, and I appreciate that, especially coming from you, man. World class. I mean, when I saw the opportunity, you know, to perform this music, of course, it was daunting and everything, but it's the pedigree. You know, you come up and you listen and you study and you shed, and, you know, it's like opportunity meets preparation. And I just wanted to approach it honestly, because, I mean, this is the time we're living in where, you know, you got to express yourself in the platform that we're blessed to have. And I just wanted to make sure I did it justice on my end. And like I said, I couldn't be prouder. Everybody, like the whole production, like everybody's heart was into it, spirit was into it. And it was just a vibe that whole day. And before I even saw the final production of the final cut, I just knew it was something special. So, man, coming from you, Sean, that means the world, bro. I appreciate you.
Oh, man, it's an honor. It's a true honor. And I do hope we can do this again for sure. I'll be right there.
No doubt.
All right. And thank you, Sean, for that. And saying something that we've known for a long time, OC being a very humble cat, hates it when we say it, you know, but it's the truth. And no doubt, above all, he is the truth. And we're blessed to have him here. Now, since you're on the subject of drums, I've seen in some of your past interviews, Mr. Jones, around the whole idea of the Freedom Now Suite, and you place a great deal of importance on the drums in the way that the music is interpreted. I recall something where you said even one part, the drums reminded you of lynching. Another part that there, if I'm wrong in what I thought I read, then, you know, at my age, I do forget sometimes. But some of the other things that you said about it have just made it very interesting, something I wanted to get you to expound upon. So if you can talk a little bit about the importance, at least in your interpretation, of the drums in this particular piece, in the Freedom Now Suite.
Well, the drums, not just in this piece, but everything and all the music that we play, we're really, all instruments are an extension of two types of instruments, either the voice or the drum. And you can't really demonstrate any type of real deep meaning in anything, any type of music that has African origin without putting the drums out front and center. And so when you have a master drummer like Brother OC, he's able to conjure up all of those emotions, all of those spirits, all of the ancestors. And that's exactly what he did. And he did it without overpowering the music. Now, the importance of the drum, of obviously in this music, you could say just on its surface, Max Roach is a drummer.
Yes.
But I believe that the purpose for him taking away the chordal element of the music, meaning the piano or anything guitar, and just allowing it to sort of have this open harmonic space, is because he wanted the drums to present that level of sophistication without hearing the harmony. So the drum, in essence, was speaking what the harmony was. And I think that's sometimes something that we often miss in jazz music. We over harmonize things so much that it crowds the rhythm. And so it was just so beautiful at this particular time to hear Brother Lavelle. We've known each other, man, for, I don't know, 25 years at this point. We used to play in Cleveland. And the fact that he was able to add the chordal element while still allowing the drum to speak to the harmonic sophistication of the music, it's just a testament to the level of artistry that y'all have with this organization. And I knew cats could play, but it's different when you hear them pay homage to something of this caliber. And it's just, I had a lot of respect for y'all before, but it just went through the roof with this, seriously.
Okay, and thank you, sir, for that. And one thing, I see that you've got the complete ornette there over your shoulder on Atlantic. So I'm about to come to where you are and steal that from you, brother. You know,
we got a lot of stuff over here. My wife and I are collecting. We're like big vinyl collectors over the past couple of years. We've really built up a little collection here, and we do have this on vinyl. So.
Right. No. This I do not have it on vinyl. That's one thing I do have to do is we insist on vinyl. I have it on CD and MP3 and everything else, but no, don't have the vinyl version of it yet. Definitely going to have to acquire that for myself. We've been also joined at this time by two more of the fine people who were a part of this presentation. We've been joined by our spoken word artist, Mr. Quentin Talley, aka Q, is here with us. So glad to have you with us, brother, as always. And we'll talk about your fine work, and a lady whose work was very much seen and appreciated, even though she wasn't seen fully as much as she should have been. And I may, because I know there are two pronunciations, so please feel free to correct me. I don't know if it's Tamara or Tamara.
You got it right the first time.
Tamara, okay. Well, I know Williams. Anyway, that one I can pronounce. So Miss Tamara Williams, also very glad, our choreographer for the pieces that we had here, and did some stunning choreographic work, and glad to have y'all with us as well. Going to go ladies first to Ms. Williams. So let's talk a little bit, if you would please, about your inspirations. Where did you draw from to create the brilliant pieces that came in first on Driver Man and then on a number of other pieces throughout the presentation? Can we talk about your inspirations and what led you to create what we saw from your dancers?
Absolutely. So when Alani gave me the call, right? Tamara, does your company want to come and work with us, speaking about social justice, right? And pulling from Max Roach's work, I said, absolutely, this is what we do in Moving Spirits. And so I told her right away, we have to do something with Ring Shout. right? And everyone always says, well, what's ring shout? And I say ring shout is basically the first dance of resistance, movement of body and music, everything that occurred here in the United States, yeah, since the enslaved people were brought here. So I'll come back to that. But we started with Drive a Man and really thinking about what the piece represented. Yeah. So we had Nija and Nia be these two women who kind of juxtapose this idea of the whip and the white overseer and telling the narrative of these Black women, the narratives of women that didn't have a voice during the time of enslavement, and many women who went through these atrocities with white men up from enslavement all the way afterwards into the 1900s, and thinking about what those narratives were, right? So we created 2 solos for the dancers to dance this woman's side of the story. And so that is how a Drive a Man came to manifest. And a lot of the movement was from the dancers themselves, coming from this place of listening to the music, feeling what the impetus was to create this music. And that's how Drive a Man, the movement for that came about. In all Africa, we decided to really go with this energy of the drum and bring different West African dances together in something that we call Dance Afro in Brazilian traditions, right? And so we brought dances from various traditions that weren't necessarily connected to the traditional music and had these various movements come together on stage for all Africa. And then we come to the ring shout for Tears of Johanna at the end. And so we brought in this movement in the counterclockwise circle, which represents honoring the ancestors and also thinking about the massacre that happened in the 1960s in Johannesburg, and honoring those people and those who came before and those people that passed away and brought these traditions to the United States through this ring shout circle, which is basically a way to honor our Black ancestors and all of the resistance and resilience that they had up until today.
And I must say, there was just such expression in every move from the dancers, because as the piece itself brings us from slavery up until at least what was at that time today, and what was going on in Africa, and your dancers and your movement brought that along and with such beautiful interpretation for the audience. So we appreciate your fine work as well. Don't want to go any longer without getting my brother Q in here, Mr. Quentin Talley, who also contributed, as those of you will see, outside of what was originally composed and created by Max Roach and Oscar Brown Jr. Well, in one of his pieces, it was partially an Oscar Brown Jr. creation, but he created one piece of his own titled We Insist, very appropriately, and then gave us a spoken word version of Oscar Brown Jr.'s Brown Baby. Let's go, Q. Let's talk a little bit about, first, your inspirations for We Insist. How did you get involved with the project, and what inspired you to write the powerful lyric that you did for We Insist?
What's up, everybody? You know, Lonnie and OC hit me up and, you know, asked me about the project. Have I ever heard of it? And I told him, of course. You know, it's one of my favorite pieces. And you know, asked to do a poem around it. So I figured, you know, we should definitely pull from the writer himself, Mr. Oscar Brown Jr., and pay homage to him. So, you know, decided on Brown Baby was a good fit, you know, for this piece. And then, you know, as far as inspiration goes, it was tons of inspiration just thinking about, you know, the lineage and, you know, how we got from one civil rights movement to today's Black Lives Matter movement, and you know, the work that, you know, we still have to go, and the progress that we've made thus far. So just trying to do that balancing act of a revolutionary poet, if you will.
Yes, sir. Let me ask you another question about that, and this may be for you and also for Mr. Bradford. I loved everything that musically went on behind you, and what you were doing. And that was a part, I don't know, is Lavelle still with us, or have we lost him? I know he was having some struggles there. So, okay, we may have lost Lavelle, but that was truly where he got to shine when he was behind you on your two pieces. I was going to ask Lavelle about some of the creation. Was that something that you and Lavelle improvised? You created it organically? Was it something you had arranged beforehand? What did that come up?
It was just organic. Yeah, it was just organic. We literally came up with it at rehearsal. You know, I kind of gave Lavelle a feel, you know, what I was a feel for it. And he took it from there and came up with, you know, what we have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely all Lavelle's doing.
Yeah. Wish I could talk to him about it here, but unfortunately we have had a few challenges. And I'm going to throw this question out first. Let me give the audience and everyone a little background for what I'm about to say. As we referred to, Oscar Brown Jr., Max Roach composed music and lyrics. They did it essentially by phone, working with Mr. Brown living in Chicago, Mr. Roach being in New York. They did it essentially back and forth by phone over a few months, and they butted heads about a few things, not the least of which being the direction of Triptych, whereas Mr. Roach wanted it to be a bit more militant, and he was very much in favor of the infamous Scream. Mr. Brown didn't like that idea so much, didn't realize it had happened till after it had already been finished. He didn't even realize there was a recording till Nat Hentoff came to him and said, "Oh yeah, we need some biographical information on you, man, for the liner notes." He's like, "Liner notes?" And so, but that's how that happened. But something that was interesting with the two of them as they composed Freedom Day together, and I'm going to read it directly here to make sure that I don't get it wrong. It says here that Max Roach said that when Oscar and I wrote Freedom Day, we could never finish it because freedom itself was so hard to grasp. We don't really understand what it really is to be free. And that's why the last sound of Freedom Day intentionally was to sound like a question mark. Dr. Griffin, I'll go to you first with the question. That was at the 100-year mark after the Emancipation Proclamation. We're sitting here essentially almost 160 years after the Emancipation and a full 160 more after this music was written. Does that question mark still exist? Do we understand now here, well into the 21st century, what freedom is?
I think that's a great question. And I think we're still grappling with the question of what freedom means. I think in the 1960s, and at least for those who went to school after the 1960s, after integration, we have been taught mostly that the civil rights movement was primarily about integration and gaining the right to vote. And that was supposed to put us on this sort of equal level playing field, if you will. But today, I think we're now having discussions about equity, mobility. We've been having conversations about policing, but you know, miraculously, it was not a part of the conversation. It wasn't a part of our understanding of what the civil rights movement was about. And so I think now, as historians, we continue to do our job and unearth exactly what went down during the 60s, 50s, 40s, and even the 30s. We're beginning to realize that a lot of our ancestor struggles and the things that they were seeking to gain, we have not been able to achieve. So I think we're still grappling with what freedom, what it means to be a free person in the United States.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd like to put that same question to anyone else on our panel who would like to answer. Again, the question being, do we still have that question mark as far as freedom? Or what is your, I'll even put it, what is your understanding of freedom right here in 2021? And have we, as America, achieved that? Or are we any closer than we were 60 years ago?
I'll jump in here.
Go ahead, brother.
You know, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately as an educator, as a new father. having friends from all spectrums of life and all over the world, I think it's important for us to contextualize this sort of as Baldwin did, and that until we are all mentally free, black, white, whatever, then there is no chance for any one version of our humanity to be free. This, slavery in this country, as unique as it is not something new. This is something that we've been dealing with as human beings from the beginning of recorded history. We have worked to enslave others for financial gain or power. So I think the question is, with this country and this experiment that is this country, we just saw it in real time a few weeks ago, the dichotomy of this, what freedom means. It's not just chains, it's mental. And yes, there are issues that we have, systemic racism, all these things. But until we tackle the fundamental divide of all human beings, then there is no chance for any one part of who we are to be free.
Well said. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I'd like to hear from one more. Then I'll just let Lonnie know that after that, I'd like to go to that video piece that I've requested. But I'd like to hear from one more of our panelists if they have something they'd like to say on this topic.
I'll share and I'll share in the spirit of my grandmother. She's 93. She's still with us. And we recently had a conversation, right, about freedom, social justice, and all of these things. And she said to me, well, Tamara, if a Black man can go out and get shot in the streets by police and nothing happened, it's actually worse than when I was a young girl, where a Black man would get killed, but at least it was done at night or in the darkness, And so she says, you do all the social justice work, but how far have we really come? Because the same outcome is still happening, right? And that really resonated with me, and so how far have we come if the same outcome is still occurring? And so that speaks exactly to what Sean just said, what everyone has said about this idea of freedom. And until we all have it, it's not there yet.
Well said. Thank you, Tamara. A lot of wisdom from you and from your grandmother, and God bless her at 93. Just still giving us wonderful things to think about. Before we go to audience questions, which I'd like to do next, I'd like to share a little bit of a piece. We've spoken about the Scream a number of times. I'd like to play, if we could, a video clip from a 1964. This is not the original recording. Unfortunately, there is no video of that recording. However, when Max Roach, Abbey Lincoln, and not the original band members, but some members of his working group at that time went to Europe in 1964, they performed the We Insist the Freedom Now suite, and it was filmed. And so we do have some film to be able to share with you. And one piece is from Triptych, the protest section, which is known as the Scream. Just a little background on that. As much as that was Max Roach's decision, even against Ms. Lincoln's wishes, it was something that she was essentially blamed for, and I do use my word blamed, for most of her career with this. But let's at least listen to that now. very powerful there from Abby Lincoln. And it was something that she later said that she came to see as simply the release of frustration. This is a woman who had dealt with so much, been through so much, and was getting to the point of A, where she was ready to put it down, and B, she couldn't take anymore. And that's what that represented. However, to the jazz press at the time, that caused them to put the entire album, which is quite melodic in a lot of ways, it caused them to put it into the category of avant-garde, which back around the year 1960, when Ornette, as we just talked about with Brother Jones, Ornette was frightening the hell out of people. Soon as you put the word avant-garde on something, it caused essentially most of the jazz populace to put this album down and to ignore it. And it truly, for at least another decade, didn't come to be appreciated as the classic that it is today. I'm going to stop talking because we are at 8:59, but we're going to go on a little bit further. If any of our artists could stay with us, we do appreciate it. We'd like to take, Lonnie, if we could, any questions from the audience. Lonnie, do we have any questions that we would like to share? Okay, I see one on my screen now from Mr. Alexander Piñeras, and he's asking the question, and I'll put this out to any of the artists who would like to answer. Are there any modern or recent works that resemble what We Insist meant during its time? I'd like to ask our artists for their perspectives.
I don't want to jump in and
go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Tons of artists are doing this right now. Keon Harold is releasing some music. Great trumpet player, releasing some music that he created due to the fact that his son got attacked over a cell phone just a couple months ago. We have that. We have the Revive Big Band that has been putting out protest music pretty much from its inception. Nicholas Payton put out some records that speak to this. The list goes on and on and on. There's a good friend of mine in Cleveland, Ohio, that just put out a piece that's called the 9 Lives Suite. And that was basically about the shooting in the church. We lost those 9 folks. Yes. And we presented that at the Jazz Education Network conference. So folks are speaking, and in the narrative is out there, and we just have to continue to support them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. Anybody else with thoughts on that same topic? Anything that they would like to share? So I don't want to take away that opportunity from anyone. Thank you, Mr. Piñeras, for the question. Lonnie, do we have any others? I saw various things flying through the screen while we've been speaking, but I didn't get any into my consciousness to come back and ask them.
I'm sorry, if I may add one more.
Yeah, go ahead, man, please. Ben
Williams.
Yes.
Ben Williams, a bass player, put out a record called I Am a Man.
Mm-hmm.
Something to check out. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Ben Williams, I Am a Man. Sorry about that, sis.
Oh, no, you're good. Actually, there have been a lot of comments, but not a whole lot of questions. I think our audience is really just taking in this conversation. So, maybe we give them a couple more minutes.
Okay. We'll do that. See if I'm going to try. I don't know. Can we get, I see Tyrone here on the screen. Can we get Mr. Jefferson in because I haven't gotten a chance to have any questions. I know we've been having the audio and video issues. Tyrone, are you able to answer questions, or is that you just chilling for a little while because the audio video parts are lost cause? Can we get you in?
Maybe if you send him a text, maybe he may be able to respond. Try that, see if that works while you're asking other questions, see if that helps.
Okay, we'll certainly try to do that, because he is a major part of what went on, and I just hated that we have him here, but that we haven't been able to get his perspective. Okay, wait a minute, we have a question coming in from Mr. Trey McGriff. What can we do to ensure that the art of jazz remains a viable form of artistic expression for our future younger generations? And once again, I'll ask from any of our artists who would like to respond on that one.
I'll jump in again.
I was gonna say, Sean, you know you want it.
Easy.
know you want to. Go ahead.
That's an easy answer. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
And do it a lot. Keep supporting. Keep buying the music. Keep playing the music. Keep challenging one another. Keep evolving. You know, all of those things. The music, you know, one of my favorite quotes is it's in a Stephen Pressfield book called the War of Art, not the Art of War. It's called the War of Art. And the quote says, "Eternity is in love with the creations of time." Eternity is in love with the creations of time. Eternity to me is basically God. That's everything that was, everything that is, everything that will be, in every single form at all. A creation of time is me. Eternity is in love with me because I make eternity made manifest in this time by doing. And so everything that we do is all about that, doing, being productive, putting it out there when we feel it, and being unapologetic about it. So as long as we keep doing, eternity will give us the fuel that we need to keep going.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There was a, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Dawn. No, please.
There was a beautiful quote that I was watching a doc about a lot of the unsung female entertainers of our time. And it says that music has always served as a form of resistance. When we didn't have money or social power, we've always had our voices, movement, rhythms to stir the soul. And it's very true. And so sometimes when people speak of artists not being involved in politics or staying in your lane, it's interesting because a lot of times the Black music has always spoken to resistance. I mean, even when you're talking about spiritual songs, when they were singing about Pharaoh wasn't the man of faith. Yeah. They were talking about who was governing them at the time.
Come on now.
And so there's always been a mode of resistance with music and putting that out there and speaking from the heart, from the voice and the hearts of the people, whatever the form it was. And so in that case, I mean, it's always been a form of quote unquote soul music.
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you for that, Dawn. I just saw a question from Miss Kay Shackelford. It's gone off of my screen. I'm going to see if I can remember. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it back. Okay. Ms. Shackelford's question is how, and we have a number of educators here with us, how do you teach this important part of jazz music that enjoy the music to jazz programs that enjoy the music, but not the history? Of course, every jazz program is not like that, but many are. All right, educators. And like I said, we've got a number here.
I'll jump in here again. That has been probably one of the most difficult aspects of teaching for me. And I'll just say this, you know, one of my mentors told me this when I was in undergrad. And he said, you know, some people like Black music, but they don't like Black people. And I was always confused by that, to be honest with you. But as the older I got, and now I really truly see it. And the first thing is you can't divorce the history from the music. You can't. It's impossible. So for those that want to try to ignore it, they're going to sound a certain way. Like if you could, and the perfect example of this is Duke Ellington's music. If you try to play Duke Ellington's music and don't understand where it came from or the spirit of it, you are going to sound sad. You're going to sound bubblegum. You're going to sound like, you know, like you just aren't taking it seriously, because the notes themselves seem simple, but the spirit in which they played the music is extremely difficult. And in order to play the music that way, you have to know the history. So I would flip it around and say that folks that say they love this music and play this music, but don't come at it with the same spirit that the music was intended to do, then we have to let them know, and we have to call them we have to tell them what's up. It's like, nah, that's not it. That is not it. And if they question it, then you got to separate what is it, the wheat from the tare.
That's right.
And we're doing a lot of that right now. When it's not authentic, we just have to say, this is not authentic. And those that want to play it but want to ignore it, I don't know how you deal with that. You just got to keep playing it and keep preaching it. And then those that don't want to deal, they'll find the door. I'm just at this point unapologetic about being a Black human being and playing this music from that spirit. I'm just, we have to stop apologizing for this, and do it and call those to task that want to take the sound of it without the feeling.
Just getting to just nothing but a bunch of empty notes at that point. Yes, you can get the notes there, but nothing else. Let me get to, I want to get to Mr. Jefferson. He said to point to him when I'm ready to hear from him. So hopefully, Tyrone, if you can speak at this point, brother, we'd love to hear from you. We're pointing, man. We're all pointing. And he's not moving. Tyrone. Let me see if we can get him in the chat. Tyrone. Going once. Trying to. Okay. Brother, we gave it our best shot, man. We really did. We really did. Anybody that's Mr. Trey McGriff has a question here talking about jazz films, and sometimes those end up being mutually exclusive. But we'll ask the question. I think it's interesting one for those who would like to get involved. Favorite jazz films. We've seen, got to say of late, we've seen a rush of films that at least are putting jazz into their soundtrack or making them a part of the narrative. We've seen a few in the last year or so, last 6 months, heck, So anybody else want to get in on Mr. McGriff's question? Favorite jazz film?
Around Midnight.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, that was that's a beautiful one. Dexter being Dexter at that point. So that's an excellent choice. Anybody else?
I go with the classic Mo Better Blues. That was the one that I really liked. I mean, that I first was introduced to Abby Lincoln. I saw her as a person. I'd heard the voice, but to see her film, yeah.
She fought Spike tooth and nail about being in that. Bleak. Because she told Spike, I am too old to be this child's mother. But she did do a nice job in there. Okay, Matt Postal is asking, was Sean Jones referring to Ron Miles's album, I Am a Man? I know Ron had one. Ron Miles did have an album, I Am a Man. I believe also that Mr. Williams had one as well. Is that correct, Sean?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if it's called I Am a Man or I Am Man. It's one of the two, and I could look it up real quick. But that's correct. Thanks, man. Thanks for clarifying that. And I'll look it up here real quick.
Okay, because I know that that Ron Miles. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
It's called I Am a Man. Ben Williams. Yeah.
Okay, so both of them had an album.
Both of them are, yeah.
I guess Ron's album, not saying it was any better, it just happened to catch more press, so to speak. So I guess more people have gotten to hear of that one as well. So as we're getting toward the end of our questions and our time, just want to throw out just for some final thoughts on the project. We've been talking so much about it. For those of you who've tuned in, we haven't mentioned when the premiere of this project will be. And Lonnie, if you wouldn't mind, can you throw the card up on it again, just so I can talk about it? Yes, that's Max Roach's We Insist, the Freedom Now Suite, as interpreted brilliantly and beautifully by JazzArts Charlotte. If you've heard the album, the original album, then you haven't heard the half of it, because with the beautiful choreography and the spoken word and everything else that comes along, there is so much more. The online broadcast premiere will be on this Friday, February the 12th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go to the JazzArts Charlotte website and experience it. And I do mean it when I say it is truly an experience that you should be a part of. Before I turn it back over to Lonnie, I want to thank all of our guests who are still with me at this point. Dr. Willie Griffin. I want to thank Quentin Talley. I want to thank Tamara Williams, Mr. Sean Jones, Miss Dawn Anthony, and also our guests who aren't on the screen at this point who've been with us. O.C. Davis, Shannon Hoover, Lavelle Bradford, Tyrone Jefferson. We tried, brother, to get you in, but, sorry we couldn't get you in there. Tyrone Jefferson and Elijah Freeman, all for being a part not only of the experience that our audience will be blessed to be a part of on Friday, but being a part of keeping jazz alive and thriving here in Charlotte and keeping the musical scene alive and thriving. We want to wish you all a wonderful Black History Month, because Black history is American history. So if I can just say one thing, go out and look for something. Those of you who want to learn more, go to a reputable source and look beyond Martin Luther King. Our history, as much as important as he is and was, our history doesn't begin and end there. Look for and find out and learn something about somebody you've never heard of and what they have done, and enrich yourself by doing so. With that said, want to thank everybody for being a part of it. You can always find me on my station, that's Kurt Jazz Radio, at kurtjazz.com and Live 365. I play the music of Sean Jones and so many others there 24/7, 365. So Lonnie, I will turn that over to you. And until next time, thank you, everybody. Lonnie, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Curtis. And thank you to everyone who has been on the show. We had an amazing panel of guests and artists, and I'm just so very excited about this program. So we thank you for watching. Please tune in on Friday, February 12th, 8 p.m. You can watch the We Insist program take place on our JazzArts social media channels. That's Facebook Live, that's YouTube Live, and also the JazzArts website. It's an amazing performance, and we hope that you are able to tune in and enjoy it. With that, if you don't know much about JazzArts Charlotte, we are a nonprofit organization located right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and our goal is jazz education, jazz performance, and musician support, and we use jazz as a tool to bring the community together. And so we hope to continue to do that as we have done this evening. So again, thank you guys for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.